The marketplace was alive with sound and color. Traders shouted from their stalls, selling strange foods that glowed in the dark, weapons that hummed with energy, and machines whose purpose few could understand. Creatures of every shape and size moved through the crowd, their voices rising like waves in a restless sea. But in the middle of this noise and chaos stood something that silenced all laughter when eyes turned toward it. A girl. She was tall and slender, her skin a pale shade of blue marked with faint silver lines that shimmered under the red lamps above. Her wrists were bound in heavy iron cuffs, chains running to a thick post that rooted her in the center of the square. Around her neck a collar gleamed, cold, cruel, and meant to strip away dignity. Children whispered and pointed. Traders shook their heads. Guards leaned against their weapons, grinning as though the sight entertained them. She did not speak. She did not cry. She sat with her back straight, her chin high, her golden eyes burning like fire against the shadows. She was a prisoner, but she carried herself as though she were still free. Daniel noticed her the moment he entered the marketplace. He had come only to trade supplies, just another traveler passing through this alien city. But when his gaze met hers, he froze. He had seen many slaves before. He had seen cages filled with broken souls, eyes dimmed with hopelessness. But this girl was different. Her silence was not weakness, it was defiance. Every breath she took declared that the Empire had not broken her. Daniel's chest tightened. He should have looked away, moved on, blended into the noise like everyone else. But her eyes did not let him. They followed him even when he tried to turn his head. It was as if they begged him to see, to remember, to act. He drifted closer, weaving between stalls. His boots struck the stone ground softly, his ears catching fragments of whispers. Dangerous, that one. A fighter, they say. Killed 2 hunters before capture. Rebel blood. Better to stay far away. The words only deepened the knot in his chest. If the stories were true, then she was a warrior, not a victim. But if they were lies, then she was simply an innocent soul chained to prove the Empire's power. Either way, she did not belong in chains. Daniel stopped a few feet away, pretending to study a merchant's wares. He traced his hand over strange fabrics that shifted color under the light, but his eyes kept drifting back to her. She sat perfectly still, but her gaze never wavered. She saw him, truly saw him, as if she could peer into the battles inside his heart. A guard noticed his stare and chuckled. "Careful, human," the man called. "That one is not for you, unless you want chains of your own." Laughter rippled from the other guards. Daniel forced a tight smile, pretending to be amused. Inside, however, his anger stirred. The way they spoke of her, as though she were not a person but an object, cut at him. The girl's eyes flicked to the guard, then back to Daniel. A message lived in that glance. She did not want pity. She wanted freedom. He felt his breath catch. A war had begun inside him. He could walk away. He could return to his ship, leave this city, and never think of her again. That would be the safe choice, the smart choice. But he already knew the truth. Walking away would not silence her eyes. They would haunt him across every world he traveled, burning in his memory like a fire that would not die. The marketplace around him blurred. The shouts, the laughter, the clinking of coins had all faded. The only thing clear, the only thing real was her. And Daniel knew with a certainty that shook him that his life had just changed. He could not ignore her. He did not yet know how he would act. He had no plan, no weapon strong enough to fight an empire. But in that moment, as the girl's golden eyes locked with his, a silent bond was formed. The guards might call her nothing. The traders might see her as property. But Daniel saw her truth. She was not broken. She was not defeated. She was shackled, yes. But she was waiting, and now so was he. The marketplace did not sleep, not even for a moment. Traders shouted about rare goods. Strange machines glowed in corners, and the air was heavy with smoke and alien spices. Yet in all this noise, Daniel's mind was caught on the girl in chains. Her eyes were like quiet fire, strong but begging for something she could not say aloud. He had walked through many worlds and seen many kinds of slavery, but never had he felt this weight in his chest before. He turned to the nearest stall owner, a small creature with 3 arms and scales on its face. "Who is she?" Daniel asked. The trader stiffened as if the question itself was dangerous. His middle arm pulled a curtain over a pile of goods. "Do not ask. She is trouble. Best keep walking, human." Daniel frowned. Trouble was often another word for truth. He leaned closer. She does not look dangerous, only lost. The trader's eyes darted to the guards near the post. Their sharp weapons glimmered under the dull red lamps of the market. Lost? No, no. She is a fighter. Her kind never bow. The chains are not to stop her body. They are to break her spirit. Daniel followed the man's glance back to the girl. She did not struggle against the shackles. She did not cry. Her silence was heavier than screams. Around her, people laughed and mocked, but she stayed still. Only her golden eyes moved, catching every detail, catching him. Another voice came from behind Daniel, low and bitter. An old alien with wrinkled skin whispered, "They say she killed 2 hunters before they caught her. Brave, yes, but foolish. The Empire does not forgive." Daniel turned quickly. Killed in self-defense? The old alien spat on the ground. Does it matter? The story is already written. They will sell her to the highest bidder. Maybe as a fighter in the pits, maybe as a pet for a cruel master. Either way, she will vanish. Forget her, human. Forget her eyes before they burn you. But Daniel could not forget. He remembered a time not long ago when humans were mocked by stronger species, called weak and simple. His people had been treated as outsiders, ignored, sometimes hunted. Yet humanity survived by refusing to break. The girl's stare felt like a mirror, reminding him of those early days when hope was thin but never dead. He stepped back into the moving crowd, pretending to browse other stalls. Still he listened. Whispers followed him like shadows. Some said she was a soldier from a rebel clan. Others claimed she was the daughter of a leader, caught to shame her people. One rumor even painted her as cursed, her very presence bringing misfortune. Yet none of these whispers matched what Daniel saw. To him she was not cursed, not broken, not an animal. She was alive, proud even in chains. Her silence stronger than all the insults thrown at her. The longer he stayed, the more he felt the tension around her. Children were pulled away from looking at her too long. Traders lowered their voices when her name came up. Guards shifted uneasily whenever she raised her chin. She was feared, not because of what she had done, but because of what she still represented. Daniel's heart tightened. He asked himself a question he already knew the answer to. Why me? Why now? He could turn away, walk out of this place, return to his ship, and no one would remember him. But something deep inside whispered that walking away would mean losing more than just a stranger. He stole one last glance at her. The crowd between them shifted, but for a brief moment their eyes locked again. Her stare was no longer empty. It was searching, pleading, daring him to step closer. Daniel looked down, pretending to examine a piece of alien jewelry. His mind raced. If the whispers were true, then freeing her would be like placing a blade at his own throat. Yet if the whispers were lies, then the Empire had chained an innocent soul, and he would become another coward for doing nothing. The marketplace roared on around him. Yet in his ears there was only silence and the sound of his own heart. The old alien's words echoed in his mind. Forget her eyes before they burn you. But Daniel knew it was too late. The fire had already caught. He clenched his fists, breath unsteady. He had not chosen this path, but perhaps it had chosen him. And so he turned back toward the shackled girl, stepping into the danger everyone else was too afraid to face. Daniel's boots struck the dusty ground as he walked back toward the center of the market. Every step felt heavier than the last. Around him, merchants shouted, children laughed, guards clinked their weapons, but none of it reached him. His mind was locked on the girl in chains. She had not moved. She sat with her wrists bound, head high, eyes sharp. She was a prisoner, yet she carried herself like a queen who refused to kneel. That pride cut deeper into Daniel than any cry for help could have. He stopped a few feet away, pretending to study the goods of a nearby stall. From this distance, he could see more details. Her skin was a pale shade of blue with faint silver markings across her cheeks. The shackles were tight, leaving bruises around her wrists. A collar, heavy and cruel, pressed against her neck. Whoever had chained her had wanted not just her body, but her spirit broken. Daniel's chest tightened. His thoughts clashed like two armies. Walk away, Daniel. This is not your fight. He told himself the words again and again. Helping her could mean death. The guards were armed, the laws of the Empire were strict, and he was only one man. He had survived this long by staying unnoticed, by blending into crowds. He could do the same now. But when his eyes rose to hers, the battle inside grew louder. She was watching him again. Her stare was not desperate, not wild, it was steady. She was asking without words. She was daring him. Daniel turned sharply, pacing back into the crowd, trying to drown his thoughts in noise. Yet every whisper he had heard replayed in his mind. A fighter. A rebel, dangerous, cursed. If any of it was true, then helping her was madness. But what if none of it was true? What if the Empire had locked her away simply because she refused to bow? He remembered his childhood on a distant colony world. Humans were laughed at, dismissed as soft and weak by other species. His father had told him, "We survive not because we are strong, but because we refuse to give up." The girl's eyes carried that same refusal. He clenched his jaw. Then another thought stabbed him. What if freeing her would hurt others? If she truly was a killer, setting her loose could spill innocent blood. Could he live with that? Daniel stopped at the corner of the marketplace, breathing hard. His hand touched the knife at his belt, the only weapon he carried. A simple blade. Small compared to the energy rifles of the guards, it felt like nothing in his hand, yet heavy with meaning. The crowd shifted, and for a moment he lost sight of her. Panic, sharp and sudden, stabbed through him. He pushed back through the people until her figure returned to view. Still chained, still silent, still watching, his choice had followed him. He realized then that this was not about strength, not about laws, not even about her story. It was about him. Could he live with himself if he turned away? Or would he spend the rest of his days haunted by a pair of golden eyes, chained and waiting for him to act? Daniel's breath slowed. His pulse steadied. The battle inside reached its answer. He could not walk away, but he also could not rush forward like a fool. If he struck too soon, both he and the girl would die before they ever reached freedom. He needed to be clever. He needed to be patient. The guards laughed loudly as a merchant offered them food. One of them pointed at Daniel, sneering at the human who lingered too long. Daniel forced himself to smile weakly, pretending to be just another curious traveler. Inside, however, his mind was racing, counting guards, marking exits, noticing shadows where a man could vanish. The girl shifted slightly in her chains. It was a small movement, almost invisible, but Daniel caught it. She tilted her head just enough to glance at the narrow alley behind her. For a second, he wondered if she was showing him a path or if he was only imagining it. He looked back into her eyes, and she gave the faintest nod. Daniel's heart pounded. She understood. She trusted him, even though he had done nothing yet. That silent bond pulled him in deeper. But then a sharp voice broke the moment. A tall guard stepped forward, his armor dark and polished. His eyes narrowed at Daniel. "Human," he barked. "Why do you stare at the property? Move along." The crowd went quiet. Traders turned their heads. All eyes fell on Daniel. He felt the weight of the knife at his belt, the weight of his decision pressing down like a storm. He forced a smile, pretending to bow. "Just curious," he said calmly. "I've never seen such strong chains." The guard studied him for a long moment, suspicion burning in his gaze. Finally, he barked a laugh and turned back to his comrades. The market noise returned, but the tension remained. Daniel exhaled slowly. His cover was thin. One wrong step and it would shatter. He looked once more at the shackled girl. She did not smile, but her eyes told him everything. She was waiting, and she believed he would not fail her. Daniel knew then that the path ahead was already chosen. Dangerous, forbidden, perhaps impossible, but chosen. The forbidden choice was no longer in front of him. He had already made it. Here's part 4 of your HFY Sci-Fi story, expanded into a full 800 words narration. It continues smoothly from part 3, adds more tension, and keeps everything in third-person style, simple basic English, and unique suspenseful flow to grip your YouTube audience. The market was alive with sound, but Daniel heard only the thudding beat of his own heart. Every laugh, every shout, every clang of metal blended into a blur. His eyes stayed fixed on the shackled girl. She sat as before, calm, steady, unbroken. Her golden eyes followed him as though they had already chosen him to be her rescuer. Daniel moved closer. He pretended to browse another stall, running his hand over alien fabrics that shimmered with strange colors. But his thoughts were far from the goods. He was measuring distance, watching the guards, counting breaths. 3 guards stood near her. One leaned lazily against the post, chewing on some bitter leaf. Another rested his rifle across his chest, scanning the crowd with half-bored eyes. The third, the tallest and most serious, stood straight with his arms crossed. He was the one who had barked at Daniel earlier. His gaze was sharp, his stance firm. He was a soldier, not just a hired thug. Daniel knew he had to act carefully. One mistake, and he would not only die but condemn the girl to harsher punishment. He stepped forward, just enough to draw their notice. "How much?" he asked, his tone casual. The guards exchanged amused looks. The tallest one sneered. "For her? More than you can pay, human. This one is no toy. She is property of the Empire." Daniel tilted his head as though curious. "Property? She looks more like a prisoner." The guard laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "Prisoners are fed. This one is owned. She will be sold to the highest bidder. Perhaps to fight. Perhaps to serve. Perhaps to die. What does it matter? She is nothing." At that word, the girl flinched. Only slightly, but Daniel saw it. The insult struck her deeper than chains. She lowered her gaze for the first time, and in that instant, Daniel felt a fire ignite inside him. "Nothing." Daniel's voice was steady, but inside his anger boiled. "She is alive. That is not nothing." The marketplace hushed. Traders paused. The air grew tense. To question the Empire, even in a market, was to invite danger. The tall guard's eyes narrowed. "You dare speak against the Empire, human?" Daniel took a slow breath, fighting to keep his expression calm. "I dare to ask a question. What crime did she commit to earn such chains?" The guard barked a laugh. "Crime? She was born with pride. That is enough. Her kind think themselves warriors, but the Empire breaks warriors. We teach them their place." Daniel's fists tightened at his sides. He wanted to strike, but striking now would mean instant death. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a pouch of credits. He tossed it lightly into the guard's hand. "Then sell her to me," Daniel said, his voice low but firm. The guard opened the pouch, coins glinting in the dim light. He sneered. "Pathetic. This is not enough to buy the dust on her chains." The other guards laughed, their voices mocking. Traders leaned in, whispering among themselves. A human offering money for a shackled alien? Madness. Daniel's jaw tightened. He knew his credits meant nothing here, but he had made his move. The moment could not be undone. The girl lifted her eyes again. For the first time she spoke. Her voice was soft, dry from thirst, but clear. "Why?" she whispered. It was only one word, but it cut through the air like a blade. Daniel froze. The crowd froze. Even the guards stared at her in shock. She had broken her silence. Daniel's lips parted, but no words came at first. Finally, he managed, "Because you deserve to be free." The guards roared with laughter, mocking his words. "Free?" the tallest one sneered. "Do you hear that, slave? The human thinks he can free you." But the girl's eyes did not leave Daniel's. For the first time, a flicker of hope sparked in her gaze. Daniel's hand drifted toward the knife hidden at his belt. His pulse raced. The guard still laughed, but the tall one's eyes grew colder. He had seen the look in Daniel's face. He sensed danger. "Enough of this," the guard growled, stepping closer. "Leave now, human, before you share her chains." The market's tension thickened. People leaned closer, waiting. Whispers rippled through the crowd. A human defying the Empire was rare and deadly. Daniel's choice was clear. His words had already marked him. Walking away now would not erase them. He looked once more at the girl. Her lips barely moved, but he caught the words. "Don't stop." The fire in his chest blazed brighter. He straightened, meeting the guard's gaze without fear. "I will not," Daniel said quietly. The guard's hand moved toward his rifle. The other guard shifted, ready to strike. The crowd held its breath, and in that charged moment Daniel knew the silence was broken. Not just hers, but his own. The first step toward freedom had been taken. Here's part 5 of your HFY Sci-Fi story, expanded into a full 800 words narration. This part shifts gears into tension plus explosive action, while still keeping the language simple, clear, and unique to hold your audience's attention. The moment stretched thin, like glass ready to shatter. Daniel's words still hung in the air. "I will not." The guards froze, their laughter silenced. The tall one's sneer twisted into a snarl, and his hand closed tightly around the handle of his rifle. The marketplace, once loud and chaotic, grew silent. Traders leaned forward, children hid behind their parents, and even the merchants stopped shouting about their goods. every eye locked on the human who dared defy the Empire. Daniel's heart hammered, but his face remained calm. His fingers brushed the small knife hidden under his belt. It was a poor weapon against blasters and chains, but it was all he had. His mind raced. Every exit, every corner, every shadow was measured. He had seconds to act. The tall guard stepped closer, towering over him. "You should have walked away, human," he growled. "Now you will die for your foolish words." Daniel did not flinch. "Maybe, but I won't die silent." With a sudden motion, the guard raised his rifle. The crowd gasped. And in that instant, Daniel moved. He ducked low, faster than expected, and the rifle fired harmlessly into the air. Sparks exploded above, scattering frightened birds from a nearby cage. Daniel slammed his shoulder into the guard's chest, knocking him off balance. The other two guards shouted, drawing their weapons, but the crowd surged with noise, breaking into chaos. Daniel pulled his knife free. The blade flashed under the red lamps of the market. He slashed at the first guard's arm, cutting deep enough to make him drop his weapon. The man howled in pain, stumbling back. The second guard rushed forward with a baton crackling with electricity. Daniel twisted sideways, the shock barely grazing his jacket. He swung his knife, catching the baton's handle, forcing the weapon to spark wildly. The tall guard recovered, his eyes burning with fury. He drew a second weapon from his belt, a heavy blade forged of alien steel. "Enough games," he roared. The crowd screamed and scattered, some climbing onto stalls for a better view, others rushing to escape the violence. Merchants pulled down curtains, trying to shield their goods. But no one left completely. Everyone wanted to see what would happen. The girl, still shackled, strained against her chains. Her golden eyes followed every movement, her lips parting as though to shout, but no sound came. She was helpless, yet her gaze urged him forward. Daniel's breath came quick, his body tense. He was smaller, weaker, poorly armed, but he had something the guards did not. He had purpose. The tall guard lunged, his blade swinging fast. Daniel ducked, rolled aside, and slashed upward with his knife. Sparks flew as steel met steel. The sound rang through the marketplace like thunder. "Kill him!" one of the guards shouted. Daniel's mind sharpened. He could not win by strength, only by speed. He darted between them, twisting through their strikes, using their size against them. He kicked one guard's knee, forcing him down. He shoved another into a stall, knocking over crates of fruit that spilled across the ground. Blasters fired, bolts sizzling past his head. He ducked behind a pillar, breath ragged. He had seconds before they cornered him. His eyes flicked back to the girl. Her chains clanged as she shifted, her voice breaking out in a whisper that somehow reached him through the chaos. "Don't stop." The words fueled him like fire. Daniel sprang from his cover, knife flashing. He grabbed the fallen guard's baton, sparks bursting in his grip. He slammed it against the second guard's chest, sending him sprawling with a cry. The tall guard roared, swinging his blade again. Daniel blocked with the baton, the clash sending a shock through his arms. He gritted his teeth, holding firm. His knife jabbed forward, grazing the guard's side. Blood splattered across the ground. The crowd roared with shock. A human had wounded an Imperial guard. The unthinkable had happened. The tall guard staggered but did not fall. His fury grew. "You will regret this, human," he spat, raising his blade high. But before he could strike, Daniel dropped low and swept the guard's legs with the baton. The man crashed to the ground, his weapon clattering away. Daniel pressed the sparking baton to his throat. The marketplace went silent again. The guards who remained hesitated. Traders held their breath. The girl's eyes widened, her chains trembling with her breath. Daniel's voice was calm, steady, unshaken. "Her chains end now." The tall guard, blood on his lips, glared up at him. His pride refused to bow, but fear flickered in his eyes. For the first time, the Empire's strength had been challenged in front of all. Daniel pressed the baton closer, the sparks crackling near the man's skin. "Free her," he ordered. The guard spat, but his voice wavered. "Do it!" he barked at the others. One of the guards, trembling, pulled a small device from his belt. He stepped toward the girl and pressed it against her shackles. The chains clicked, releasing with a heavy clang. Her arms dropped free, bruised but strong. The collar fell loose from her neck. She stood, weak yet unbroken, her gaze fierce as fire. The crowd erupted, some in cheers, others in fear. The marketplace was no longer just a place of trade. It had become the spark of rebellion. The girl stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly now. "You saw me," she said to Daniel, her words strong and steady. "And you did not turn away." Daniel lowered the baton but kept his knife ready. He looked at her, breathing hard, his chest rising and falling. "We're not safe yet," he said. "We have to run." Her lips curved in the faintest smile. "Then let us run together." And with the Empire's eyes burning into their backs, they turned toward the narrow alleys of the city. The storm had been unleashed, and there was no going back. Here's part 6 of your HFY Sci-Fi story, expanded into a full 800 words narration. This chapter focuses on the chase, the escape, and rising suspense, while keeping the language simple, clear, and unique to grip your YouTube audience. The marketplace exploded into chaos. Shouts filled the air, boots thundered on the stone ground, and the alarms of the Empire wailed from every corner. Daniel grabbed the girl's hand, pulling her forward through the sea of bodies. She stumbled at first, her wrists raw from the chains, but she matched his pace quickly, her golden eyes fierce despite her weakness. Behind them, the guards roared. "Stop them. Stop the human and the slave." Blaster fire cracked through the crowd. Traders screamed and ducked behind their stalls. Crates shattered, spilling glowing fruit and broken glass across the floor. Sparks flew as bolts burned into the walls. Daniel ducked low, pulling the girl with him. "This way!" he shouted, darting toward a narrow passage between two tall buildings. The girl's breath came sharp and fast, but she did not slow. "They will not stop," she said, her voice strong despite the danger. "Neither will we," Daniel answered. They burst into the alley, the world narrowing into shadows and neon light. The wet ground reflected red lamps overhead, slick with rainwater. Trash clattered as they shoved past barrels and broken machines. Their footsteps echoed, loud against the silence of the city beyond the market. But the silence did not last. The sound of boots followed them. Guards shouted orders, their voices bouncing off the walls. The hunt had begun. Daniel's mind raced. He had no plan beyond running, but instinct guided him. Every turn, every step was measured to buy more time. His eyes searched for cover, for escape routes, for anything that could hide them. The girl kept up, surprising him. Her chains had been heavy, yet now she moved like someone who had trained her whole life for survival. She was not just a prisoner, she was a fighter forced into silence. At the next corner, Daniel spotted a stack of metal crates. "Help me," he hissed. Together they shoved the crates over. They crashed into the alley, blocking part of the path. It would not stop the guards for long, but it would slow them. Blaster fire sizzled against the crates seconds later. Sparks rained over their heads. "Keep moving," Daniel urged. They sprinted deeper into the city, weaving through the maze of alleys. The neon glow painted their faces in shifting colors, blue, red, green, like a dream twisted into nightmare. The girl spoke between breaths. "You risked everything for me. Why?" Daniel's chest burned, but his voice was steady. "Because no one deserves chains, not you, not anyone." Her eyes softened for a moment, even as they ran. "Then I will not waste your risk." The chase grew louder behind them. The guards were relentless. More voices joined, the sound of soldiers answering the call of the alarm. The Empire did not forgive defiance. At the next turn, Daniel spotted a low wall. "Climb!" he ordered. He dropped his knife into his belt and boosted her upward. She pulled herself with surprising strength, her feet scrambling against the wall. Daniel leapt after her, his fingers catching the edge. They rolled into a dim courtyard on the other side. The space was small, filled with broken machines and old wires. The smell of rust and oil filled the air. For a moment, the noise of the chase faded. Their breaths came ragged, their bodies trembling with exhaustion. Daniel leaned against a broken pillar, his chest heaving. The girl pressed a hand against her neck where the collar had left a raw mark. "Are you hurt?" Daniel asked. She shook her head. "Not hurt. Not anymore." Her voice was quiet, but there was strength in it. "But they will find us soon." Daniel nodded. She was right. Hiding was only a pause. The storm was still behind them. He scanned the courtyard. A narrow drain tunnel stretched along the wall, half hidden by debris. It was small, dark, and filled with the stink of wastewater, but it led deeper into the city, away from the open streets where guards would search first. "There," Daniel said, pointing. "Through that tunnel." The girl's nose wrinkled, but she nodded without hesitation. Together they pulled away the debris and squeezed inside. The tunnel was tight, forcing them to crawl on hands and knees. The air was damp, the walls slick with slime. Drops of water echoed in the dark. Their breath sounded too loud, too human. Behind them, faint echoes of shouting reached their ears. The guards had entered the courtyard. Daniel pressed a finger to his lips, urging silence. The girl nodded, her golden eyes glinting faintly in the dark. For long minutes they crawled. The tunnel twisted and turned, carrying them far from the sounds of pursuit. Daniel's knees ached, his palms scraped, but he pushed forward. The girl's presence behind him was steady, her breath controlled. Finally, faint light appeared ahead. They emerged into another part of the city, a lower level where rusting pipes ran along the walls and the smell of damp earth filled the air. They stood, stretching their sore limbs. The city above roared with alarms, but down here it was quieter. Daniel turned to the girl. She stood tall despite exhaustion, her silver-marked skin glowing faintly in the dim light. Her eyes met his, and for the first time since they met, she smiled. Small, tired, but real. "You gave me back my freedom," she said softly. Daniel shook his head. "Not yet. Freedom is still ahead. We just escaped." "That's all," her smile widened. "Then we will keep escaping. Together." Above them, the Empire hunted. But here, in the shadows, two figures, human and alien, had forged a bond stronger than chains, stronger than fear. The escape had only begun. Here's part 7 of your HFY Sci-Fi story, written in 800 words with a focus on bonding, truth revealed, and emotional depth while still keeping suspense alive for your audience. It flows naturally from the escape in part 6. The lower levels of the city were a world apart from the bustling market above. Here the air was thick with dampness. Pipes leaked in steady drips, and the walls groaned as if the city's bones were breaking. Shadows clung to every corner, broken only by the faint glow of old neon signs long forgotten. Daniel and the girl rested against a rusting pipe, their bodies weary from the chase. Daniel's chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. His hands scraped and bruised. The girl leaned against the wall, her golden eyes calm but watchful, her wrists raw where the chains had once bitten into her skin. For the first time since the chaos began, silence stretched between them. A heavy silence filled with unspoken questions. Daniel finally broke it.
"What's your name?"
The girl turned her gaze to him, studying his face as though weighing whether he deserved the truth. At last she spoke, her voice low but strong. "My name is Soraya." Daniel repeated it quietly, letting it settle in the air. "Soraya, it suits you." She tilted her head slightly, almost curious. "And yours?" "Daniel," he answered. "Just Daniel." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Daniel." "The human who dared." He gave a dry laugh, shaking his head. "The human who nearly got both of us killed, you mean?" But Soraya shook her head. "No, you saw me when no one else would. That matters more than the risk." Her words struck deeper than she realized. Daniel had always been a wanderer, drifting from world to world, never staying long enough to belong. Yet here in her voice was something he had not heard in years: recognition. He leaned back against the pipe, staring at the dripping ceiling. "Why were you shackled, Soraya? What did they fear so much?" Her eyes darkened, the gold glowing faintly in the dim light. She hesitated, then spoke slowly. "I am not a criminal, Daniel. I am a daughter of the Vayari clan. We were once warriors, proud defenders of our people. But the Empire sees pride as rebellion. They wanted us bent, broken. When I refused to kneel, they made me an example. Shackled, displayed, silenced." Her voice grew harder with each word, but beneath it was pain. Not just hers, the pain of a people humiliated. Daniel's jaw tightened. "So they chained you, not because of what you did, but because of what you are." Soraya nodded. "They wanted others to see me and learn fear. To believe resistance is hopeless, but..." She looked at him now, her eyes steady. "Then you came, and you broke their lesson." Daniel met her gaze, and for a moment the damp, broken tunnel felt less dark. He exhaled slowly. "If they catch us again, they'll kill us both. You know that." "I know." Her voice was calm, without fear. "But freedom is worth more than life in chains. If I die free, then I am not broken." Her words stirred something deep in him. He had always thought survival was the only goal. Keep moving, keep breathing, no matter the cost. But Soraya spoke of something greater. Of dignity. Of meaning. He looked at her wrists, bruised and scarred. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. She frowned. "Why?" Because I couldn't save you sooner. Her eyes softened. She reached out slowly, her fingers brushing his hand. The touch was light, hesitant, but real. You saved me now. That is enough. The moment stretched between them, fragile and powerful. In the silence, their breaths mingled. Their hearts beat in rhythm. But then the distant sound of boots echoed faintly through the tunnels. The Empire's hunt was not over. Soraya's eyes hardened again. They will not stop until they find us. Daniel nodded. Then we can't stay here. He pushed himself up, offering her his hand. Together? She took it without hesitation. Together. They moved deeper into the tunnels, their steps quiet, their bodies tense. The lower levels twisted like a maze, but Daniel trusted his instincts and Soraya's sharp senses. Every sound, every shadow could be danger. Yet for the first time, they did not move as strangers. They moved as one. As they walked, Daniel felt the weight of the day pressing on him. He had chosen a path that could not be undone. He had challenged the Empire, shed their blood, freed their prisoner. There would be no hiding now. But when he glanced at Soraya, walking strong beside him despite her bruises, he felt no regret. Her eyes were alive with fire, and that fire lit his own. In the silence of the tunnels, she spoke again, her voice firm. They will call you enemy now, Daniel. Not just of the Empire, but of order itself. He gave a small smile. Then let them. I'd rather be their enemy than a coward who looked away. Her lips curved into a rare smile, pride shining in her eyes. Then you are not just a human. You are a warrior. The word struck him harder than any blade. A warrior. He had never called himself that. But in her voice, it did not sound like flattery. It sounded like truth. They continued on, footsteps echoing in the dark, the Empire closing in above. But the chains were gone, the silence broken, and a bond forged stronger than fear had begun to grow between them. And Daniel knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever came next, they would face it together.